It's time for Fresh Oil with singer-songwriter and pastor Keith Manley, a program designed to minister the gospel of God's grace and to bring fresh oil to the brokenhearted. And now, with today's program, Pastor Keith Manley.
Hello, friend. Welcome back to Fresh Oil. This week on Fresh Oil, I'm teaching from the book of Nehemiah. This series is pretty much aimed at leaders, but it applies to everyone. It applies to you with your job. It applies to your leadership in the home. And we learned that Nehemiah was cupbearer to the king in Persia. And he asked the king for permission to go back to Jerusalem. His brother had come with a report that the walls had been destroyed and burned, and it's fresh damage, and Nehemiah's heart is broken. He wept bitterly before the Lord. And then he comes in and asks the king for permission to go back and rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. Now, yesterday we dealt with the specific attacks that begin to come against him. It's in the 6th chapter of Nehemiah. We're going to pick up today with verse 1. This is what it says, verse 1 through 4. Now it happened when Sanballat, Tobiah, Geshem the Arab, and the rest of our enemies heard that I had rebuilt the wall, and that there are no breaks left in it, though at that time I had not hung the door in the gates, that Sanballat and Geshem sent to me, saying, Come, let us meet together among the villages in the plain of Ono. But they thought to do me harm. So I sent messengers to them, saying, I am doing a great work, so that I cannot come down. Why should the work cease while I leave and go down to you? But they sent me this message 4 times, and I answered them in the same manner. Now get this, friend. 4 times Nehemiah's enemies invited him. 4 times they tried to get him to leave the wall and come to a meeting in the plain of Ono. And Nehemiah recognized it for what it was. It was an assassination plot. They wanted to remove him from the protection of Jerusalem, isolate him, and kill him. But when he refused to come, they escalated to character assassination. Look at verse 5. Then Sanballat sent his servant to me as before, the 5th time, with an open letter in his hand. In it was written, It is reported among the nations, and Geshem says, that you and the Jews plan to rebel. Therefore, according to these rumors, you are rebuilding the wall, that you may be their king. And you have also appointed prophets to proclaim concerning you at Jerusalem, saying, This is the king in Judah. Now those matters will be reported to the king. So come, therefore, and let us consult together. Now this is brilliant and it's diabolical. An open letter means everyone can read it. It's a public accusation designed to destroy Nehemiah's reputation. And the accusations are serious. Rebel against the Persian king, setting himself up as a rival king, appointing prophets to legitimize his rule. So these are charges that could get Nehemiah executed. These are accusations that could turn his supporters against him. This is reputation destruction. It's designed to isolate him and delegitimize his work. And then in verses 10 through 13, we see even a more insidious attack. Afterward, I came to the house of Shemaiah, who was a secret informer, and he said, Let us meet together in the house of God, within the temple, and let us close the doors of the temple, for they are coming to kill you. Indeed, at night they will come to kill you. And I said, Should such a man as I flee? And who is there such as I who would go into the temple to save his life? I will not go in. Then I perceived that God had not sent him at all. But he pronounced this prophecy against me because Tobiah and Sanballat had hired him. For this reason he was hired, that I should be afraid and act that way and sin, so that they might have cause for an evil report, that they might reproach me. See, friend, this is a spiritual manipulation that's designed as godly counsel. Oh, have you been there? A man who appears to be a prophet, who seems to have Nehemiah's best interests at heart. He advises him to hide in the temple for his own safety. Sounds reasonable, right? If assassins are coming, just go hide in the safest place. But Nehemiah sees through it. First, only priests could enter the inner temple. And if Nehemiah violated this law to save his own life, he would be sinning against God. He would lose credibility with the people and give his enemies exactly what they wanted, evidence that he was willing to compromise God's law for personal benefit. Friend, this was a trap to make him sin through fear, and it came from someone who appeared to be on his side. Pastors, this is one of the enemy's most effective tactics, getting you to compromise through seemingly wise counsel from people who claim to have your best interests at heart. How many leaders have been led astray, not by obvious enemies, but by trusted advisors who gave permission to compromise? Now, let's look at how Nehemiah responded to each stage of opposition, because this is where we learn the practical lessons for our own leadership. First, when they mocked him, Nehemiah's first response was prayer. Chapter 4, verses 4 and 5 record it. "Hear, O our God, for we are despised. Turn their reproach on their own heads, and give them as plunder to a land of captivity. Do not cover their iniquity, and do not let their sin be blotted out before you, for they have provoked you to anger before the builders." Now, some people get very uncomfortable with this prayer because it sounds harsh, sounds vindictive, not very Christ-like. But look more closely at what Nehemiah is doing. First, he's taking the burden of defense to God. He's not plotting revenge. He's not scheming about how to get back at them. He's not gossiping about them to the people. He's taking it straight to God, and he's saying, you deal with this. You handle it, God. This is your work, so you defend your work. Secondly, he's making it about God's reputation and not his own. Notice the language, we are despised. They have provoked you to anger. He's saying, God, this isn't just about me. This is about your people and about your purposes. They're attacking your work, God, not just my project. And then thirdly, he asks God to judge those who opposed God's purposes. The Hebrew word is cherpah, which means shame, disgrace, and contempt. Nehemiah is saying, God, they're trying to shame us. They're trying to disgrace your people. I'm giving this shame to you. You deal with it according to your justice. So many times we feel we have to defend ourselves when what we need to really do is hand it over to God and let him handle the situation. Here's the key, though. Look at verse 6. So we built the wall, and the entire wall was joined together up to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. I love that verse. After praying, what did they do? They kept building. They didn't stop to defend themselves. They didn't call a meeting to address the criticism. They didn't try to answer every accusation. They just kept working. Here's the principle, and this is crucial. Don't defend yourself with words. Defend yourself with work. Let your progress be the answer. Let your accomplishments speak for themselves. When people mock your vision, the best response isn't a better argument. It's sustained progress. It's showing tangible results. Keep building. It's walls being rebuilt while critics are talking. I've seen pastors spend more time defending their vision than implementing it. I've seen leaders so focused on answering the critics that they neglect the work God called them to do and then get back to work. When the opposition escalated to threats of violence, Nehemiah didn't ignore the danger, but he didn't surrender to fear either. Look at his twofold strategy today in verse 9. Nevertheless, we made our prayer to our God, and because of them we set a watch against them day and night. Notice the beautiful balance here. We prayed, that's spiritual response, and we set a watch, that's a practical response. Nehemiah didn't say, well, we'll just pray and trust God to protect us. No, he didn't say we'll just post guards and handle this ourselves. He did both. He prayed, and in the natural, he posted guards. This is the same principle we saw in our first program on Monday. You trust God completely while being as wise as possible. Faith isn't the absence of planning. No, it's confidence while you plan. Faith is not recklessness. It's wisdom grounded in trust. And then in verses 13 and 14, he organizes the defense. It said, "Therefore, I position men behind the wall at the openings, and I set the people according to their families, with their swords and their spears and their bows. And I looked and arose and said to the nobles, to the leaders, and to the rest of the people, 'Do not be afraid of them. Remember the Lord great and awesome, and fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses.'" Look at what he did, friend. He positioned people strategically based on their families. Why families? Because families fight harder when they're protecting each other. He armed them appropriately with different types of weapons for different situations. He gave them a pep talk, and then he combined spiritual encouragement with practical reality. Do not be afraid of them. The Hebrew word there for fear, it's yareh. It's the same word used for reverence toward God. Nehemiah is saying, transfer your fear from the enemy to the Lord. Let your awe of God be greater than your fear of men. Remember the Lord great and awesome. I love that Hebrew word for remember. It's zakar. I've taught you this many times. It doesn't mean just recall the information. No, it means to act based on what you know. It's a root word. The root word is male. And why would zakar have anything to do with male? Because in the male is the reproductive seed. And when you remember, just like David did when he said, "The God who delivered me from the lion and the bear will deliver me from this Philistine." When you remember, it creates the reproductive ability of God to bring it back again and make the miracle happen all over again. He says, fight for your brothers, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. Make it personal. This isn't just defending abstract concepts or goals. This is about protecting the people that you love. Now, in verse 15, it says, "And it happened when our enemies heard that it was known to us and that God had brought their plot to nothing, that all of us returned to the wall, everyone to his work." Notice the phrase, God had brought their plot to nothing. Even though Nehemiah had organized the security and posted the guards, he attributed their safety to God's intervention. Here's the principle, pastors. Acknowledge real threats without being controlled by fear. Prepare wisely, trusting completely in God. Now let's bring this home in closing today with some principles for handling opposition. First, expect opposition. Don't resent it. Opposition isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's a confirmation that you're doing something right. Then secondly, pray about the opposition. Don't promote it. Take your critics to God and give it to Him in prayer. Thirdly, let the work answer your critics. Keep on doing what God has called you to do, and then protect your people and not just your project. You might be listening today and you've given up because the opposition has been fierce. The critics have been loud. Friend, don't let that discouragement keep you from doing what God has called you to do. Thank you for joining me today on Fresh Oil. We'll see you tomorrow with the conclusion.
What does it look like to give your life not to fame, but to faithfulness? In I Wish You Jesus, author Keith Manley tells the powerful, deeply human story of Scott Wesley Brown, one of the most influential voices in contemporary Christian music, whose legacy has always pointed beyond the stage and toward the Savior. From humble beginnings and early musical stirrings, through decades of songwriting, global ministry, and personal sacrifice, this biography traces the journey of a man who chose obedience over applause and mission over spotlight. Brown's songs shaped a generation of worshipers, but his greatest message was never confined to lyrics. It was lived out through faith.
Check out my new book, I Wish You Jesus, The Life and Music of Scott Wesley Brown. It's available now on Amazon in paperback, hardcover, or the Kindle ebook edition.
Thanks for joining us today for Fresh Oil with Pastor Keith Manley. Fresh Oil is an outreach of Grace Family Church in Rockford, Illinois, and can be heard each weekday at this same time. You can reach us online at weneedgod.com. Until next time, remember, God's love for you is unconditional, and He makes His mercies new every morning.